The Johnson family, driven by a stroke of fortune, embarked on a new chapter in their lives. They had inherited an old house, a place with a history as rich as it was mysterious. John, a stoic man hardened by city life, saw an opportunity in the old house. To him, it was a chance to start anew, to build something lasting away from the urban chaos. Mary, his wife, carried a sense of unease, her intuition whispering against the move. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that the house held secrets best left undisturbed. Little Billy, their son, found joy in the sprawling woods, oblivious to the shadows lurking beneath the trees. To him, it was an adventure, a playground filled with endless possibilities. Their new home, a sprawling Victorian mansion, stood isolated, shrouded in an unnatural stillness as if holding its breath. The fog that often enveloped it added to its eerie charm. The house, a relic of a bygone era, had belonged to a distant relative, a reclusive artist known for his peculiar and disturbing works. His paintings, still hanging on the walls, seemed to watch their every move. John saw it as an investment, a chance to escape the city's clamour. He envisioned a future where they could live peacefully, away from the noise and pollution. Mary, however, felt a creeping dread, an icy finger tracing her spine as they crossed the threshold. The house seemed to whisper to her, its voice a low murmur she couldn't quite understand. Billy, too young to grasp the weight of the situation, darted through the darkened hallways, his laughter echoing unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. He was blissfully unaware of the house's ominous aura. As days melted into weeks, the family settled into an uneasy routine. The house, with its creaking floors and drafty windows, became their new normal. John busied himself with restoring the neglected gardens, finding solace in the feel of earth beneath his nails. It was his way of bringing life back to the place. Mary, plagued by unsettling dreams, found herself drawn to the house's shadows, sensing a presence that watched their every move. Her nights were restless, filled with visions she couldn't explain. Billy, once so full of carefree energy, grew withdrawn, his laughter replaced by a silence that spoke louder than words. He seemed to sense the house's dark history in a way his parents couldn't. The change was subtle at first, a creeping chill that settled over the house after sunset. It was as if the house itself was coming alive, its presence growing stronger with each passing day. John, ever the pragmatist, dismissed it as drafts, remnants of the house's age. He believed that with time and effort, they could make the house a home. Mary, however, felt a prickling at the back of her neck, a feeling of being watched that intensified with each passing night. She couldn't shake the sense that they were not alone. It was as if the house itself was waking from a long slumber, its eyes opening for the first time in decades. The walls seemed to breathe, the floors to sigh, as if the house was stretching, awakening to the presence of its new inhabitants. The shadows in the old house held a life of their own. They stretched and contorted, twisting familiar shapes into grotesque parodies. At the edge of their vision, Mary and John would catch glimpses of movement, fleeting figures that vanished when confronted. A sense of unease settled over the family, a constant tension that tightened their nerves like wires stretched taut. Sleep offered no escape from the growing dread. Mary tossed and turned, haunted by nightmares of shadowy figures with hollow eyes and smiles that stretched too wide. John, though loath to admit it, found himself waking with a jolt, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence of the house was no longer peaceful, but rather a suffocating blanket, heavy with unspoken secrets. Billy, once so carefree, now clung to his parents, his laughter silenced by an unspoken fear. He spoke of things he saw in the shadows, things that made Mary's blood run cold. He drew pictures of smiling faces with empty eyes, faces that seemed to stare back from the page, their smiles a grotesque mockery of comfort. John, though skeptical, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The once comforting darkness of night became a breeding ground for terror. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle of leaves against the window pane sent shivers down their spines. The house, once a symbol of new beginnings, had transformed into a prison, its shadows closing in, suffocating the joy that had once filled their lives. Fear, like a venomous fog, seeped into every corner, poisoning their thoughts, their dreams, their very souls. Billy's once vibrant imagination, now a breeding ground for terror, manifested in chilling drawings. Twisted figures with hollow eyes and unsettling grins filled his sketchbook. He spoke of whispers in the dark, unseen hands that brushed against him in the night. His innocent eyes, now wide with fear, reflected a darkness that chilled his parents to the bone. Mary, her heart aching for her son, tried to rationalize his fears, but the truth was, she shared them. The shadows in the house seemed to react to Billy, to feed off his growing terror. They twisted and contorted at the edge of her vision, taking on grotesque shapes that mirrored the drawings in her son's sketchbook. John, desperate to maintain a sense of normalcy, clung to logic, but even he couldn't deny the palpable shift in the house's atmosphere. Nighttime became a battleground, every shadow a potential threat. Bedtime stories were replaced with whispered prayers, the silence broken only by the frantic beat of their hearts. Billy's cries echoed through the darkened hallways, each sob a nail hammered into the coffin of their sanity. John, his face etched with worry, paced the floor, his footsteps hollow against the wooden floorboards. The house, once a place of refuge, had become a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. The shadows held them captive, their unseen eyes watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. Mary, her maternal instinct screaming for her to protect her child, knew they had to uncover the truth behind the shadows before they consumed them all. Driven by a desperate need to protect her family, Mary delved into the house's past, hoping to uncover any secrets that might help her understand the strange occurrences. The attic, a dusty repository of forgotten memories, became her obsession. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the air was thick with the scent of old paper and forgotten dreams. Cobwebs clung to her hair like ghostly fingers as she sifted through old journals and yellowed photographs, each item a fragment of a story long forgotten. Each creak of the floorboards, each whisper of wind against the grimy windows sent shivers down her spine. But she pressed on, her fear fueled by a mother's love and an unyielding determination to protect her family. Within the brittle pages of a leather-bound diary, she found her first clue, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The diary belonged to the house's previous owner, the reclusive artist, and its entries painted a chilling picture of a man consumed by his own obsessions. The artist had been obsessed with shadows, believing they held a power beyond human comprehension, a power that could be harnessed for both creation and destruction. He wrote of rituals and sacrifices, of a darkness he sought to control, a darkness that ultimately consumed him, leaving behind only his haunting works and cryptic writings. As Mary delved deeper, the diary's entries grew more disturbing, revealing the artist's descent into madness and his entanglement with forces beyond his understanding. The artist described a cult that worshipped an ancient evil, an entity that dwelled in the shadows, feeding on fear and despair, a malevolent force that thrived on human suffering. He had joined the cult seeking inspiration, but soon realized the terrible truth. The shadows were not his to command, but rather he was their puppet, dancing to their sinister tune, his life a mere plaything for the darkness. With trembling hands, Mary unearthed a box hidden beneath a pile of rotting canvases, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Inside she found strange artifacts, a silver mirror with a tarnished surface, a collection of herbs that emitted an unsettling aroma, and a book bound in human skin, each item more disturbing than the last. As her fingers brushed against the book's cover, a jolt of energy surged through her, and a single word echoed in her mind: light. It was as if the book itself was alive, whispering secrets from the past. It was a whisper, a plea, a desperate beacon in the encroaching darkness. Mary knew she had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost, for the sake of her family and the light that still flickered within her heart. The faces in the shadows grew bolder, their smiles wider, their eyes hollow and cold. They seemed to feed off the fear that permeated the air, growing more menacing with each passing night. They no longer hid at the periphery of their vision, but instead lingered in doorways, peered through windows, their presence a constant torment. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a prison of dread and despair. John, his skepticism crumbling, finally admitted the truth. They were not alone in the house. The evidence was undeniable, and the fear in his eyes mirrored the terror that gripped his heart. Something was wrong, something evil had taken root, and it was feeding off their fear. The very walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, a dark force that thrived on their growing panic. Billy's drawings became more frantic, his childlike strokes now infused with a chilling realism. Each line, each stroke, seemed to capture the essence of the horror that surrounded them. The figures in his pictures multiplied, their smiles growing ever wider, their eyes burning with an unnatural light. It was as if the drawings were a window into another world, a world where the shadows ruled. He scratched at the walls, desperate to escape the unseen gazes that followed his every move. The sound of his nails against the plaster was a haunting reminder of their helplessness. Mary, her heart breaking at his torment, vowed to protect her son, even if it meant confronting the darkness head-on. She knew that she had to be strong, for Billy's sake and for the sake of their sanity. One night, as the full moon cast an eerie glow upon the house, the shadows coalesced, taking on a more defined form. They seemed almost tangible, their presence a suffocating weight on the family's spirits. They swirled and pulsed in the corners of the room, their laughter a cacophony of whispers and hisses echoing through the darkened hallways. The sound was maddening, a constant reminder of the evil that lurked within. John, his face pale with fear, gathered his family close, his arms a protective barrier against the unseen threat. He knew that they had to stay together, that their unity was their only hope. Mary, clutching the tarnished silver mirror from the attic, stepped forward. She had read about its power, its ability to repel the darkness, and she hoped it would be enough. The shadows recoiled at her touch, their laughter turning into a chorus of angry snarls. It was a small victory, but it gave them a glimmer of hope. She had found their weakness, a glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. It was a fragile hope, but it was enough to keep them fighting. The diary had mentioned a ritual, a way to banish the shadows, but it was fragmented, incomplete. They needed to find the missing pieces, to uncover the full ritual before it was too late. They needed more time, more knowledge, but the shadows were closing in, their patience wearing thin. The family knew that they were running out of options and that the final confrontation was imminent. As the darkness threatened to consume them, Mary clutched the tarnished silver mirror, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She remembered the single word that had echoed in her mind when she first touched the book in the attic: light. It was time to put that knowledge to the test. Mary gathered her family in the living room, their faces pale with fear but resolute. "We have to use the mirror," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "It's our only hope." With trembling hands, she positioned the mirror to catch the moonlight streaming through the window. The silver surface, though tarnished, began to glow softly, reflecting a beam of light that cut through the oppressive darkness. The shadows recoiled, hissing and snarling as the light touched them. Mary moved through the house, using the mirror to reflect light into every dark corner. The shadows writhed and twisted, their sinister forms dissolving into nothingness as the light banished them from existence. The faces that had tormented them, with their hollow eyes and eerie grins, began to fade. The oppressive weight that had hung over the house lifted, replaced by a growing sense of peace. As the last of the shadows dissolved, Mary turned to her family, her eyes filled with tears of relief. Robert, Tommy and Lucy stood there, their faces no longer twisted by fear and despair. They looked at her with gratitude, their smiles genuine and warm. The night passed without further incident, the house finally at peace. In the morning, the family packed their belongings, their movements quick and decisive. They had survived the darkness, but they knew they couldn't stay. As they drove away, the sunlight streamed through the car windows, bathing them in its warm golden glow. Mary glanced back at the house one last time, a sense of closure settling over her. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. The road stretched ahead, filled with the promise of a new beginning, a future free from the shadows that had once haunted them. And as the sunlight continued to stream in, Mary knew that they would be all right. If you liked my video, please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.